Hello everybody and welcome to the remastered version of my original top 10 modded Terraria bosses. 2021 has been an insane year for the modding community as many incredible bosses keep coming from left to right. Just to put it into a perspective, only one boss from my previous ranking made it into this new list. So without wasting any more time, I present to you my top 10 modded Terraria bosses remastered edition. To begin this list of amazing bosses, we have the most recently updated Patient Zero fight. There are many positive things that land this boss in this wasteland of a list. Most notably being the incredibly well done build up from the very first moment you enter the abandoned lab. The dark and spooky half-life setting of this lab is phenomenal, and it is one of the main factors that make this encounter incredibly frightening. From the moment you barge the last door leading up to the boss arena, you can already tell that this fight is gonna be serious, and serious it is. As the final boss of the abandoned lab, P0 has really dangerous attacks that are designed with a small arena in mind. P0 takes advantage of the enclosed space to make very tricky attacks and force the players to act quick when finding gaps. Small arenas usually make the options of what bosses can do very limited, or very bullshit. But for Patient Zero case, it works extremely well with really creative attacks that utilize the arena and really good telegraphing on most of the attacks. Like, seriously, I cannot emphasize how well designed the attacks really are, like the sweeping lasers, since they are the perfect kinds of attack for this kind of boss due to the huge area it can quickly cover. The boss also has a unique mechanic where it can switch between Patient Zero and Kari, each having unique attacks, and it can contain a lot of surprises since they are both very different to one another. The perfect build up to this giant tumor eye fight is certainly compelling, and it creates this intense fight really immersive with the atmosphere, which is why I think Patient Zero is an amazing closure to the radiated danger of the lab. Emerging from the shadows, we have yet another great addition to the mod of redemption boss roster, the Warden. It is one of the most unique fights on this list when compared to the others. It isn't a fast-paced bullet hell, but rather an atmospheric, depressing, slow-paced puzzle of a fight. The main mechanic of the fight is a candle which spawns above the player's head, which the Warden will try to extinguish, leaving the player impaired of vision. The boss has several unique attacks, such as hide and seek, where the Warden will make clones of himself across the arena, and the player has to find the one with the right mask that will flash above the player's head. This encounter nails the atmosphere so insanely well with its dark and mysterious ambient, literally with the player barely being able to see that far. This is complemented perfectly by the slow and foreboding soundtrack. Once the Warden's health is depleted, it will break off its mess, starting phase 2, with several harder versions of previous attacks as well as new ones. The boss takes away some of the player's max HP, and it is stored in lanterns that must be broken to regain it. The Warden has several new attacks, such as the Puppet Hand, a puppet master figure that pulls the player closer to its demise when not quickly dismantled. While most bosses in this list are up here for being a memorable epic duel, Warden is here because of how interesting and sorrowful this amalgamation of souls really is. For the next boss on my list, we have the Exomax from the Calamity mod, the newest boss added to the recent 1.5 update. This fight is a weird one since the Exomax being on this list is already a controversial debate, but let me explain. Exomax in terms of mechanics is currently Calamity at its best. The fight has many step-ups from what Calamity normally serves, featuring a more complex mechanic and one of, if not, the best sprite work ever made. While the fight has a lot of positives, it also sparked a lot of debate with many people criticizing them for being too projectile spammy. But since this list is based on my opinion, I will give my whole perspective on this ordeal. I personally think Exomax are amazing, but they need a lot of tweaking. In my opinion, the fight is incredibly fun as getting chased by this deadly killer mechs gives you a sense of tension every second. The many phases throughout the fight and even combinations of different mechs meshed together depending on which mech you take down adds a lot of complexity. To top it off, you can even choose which mechs you want to fight first, resulting in the player being able to create many different approaches and strategies, which is really rewarding to figure out. The individual mech by themselves is also great as they all have unique behavior and traits. Artemis and Apollo are duos that can perform tag team attacks. Ares is a heavyweight machine that is coupled with exocannons, each with a unique attack patterns. Thanatos is a gigantic war machine with segments that can only be damaged when they are open, and also lasers. Lots of lasers. Fucking lasers, they are everywhere, screw them. The Exomax are also pretty consistent bosses once you get the strategy down. I even beat them without having to create a gigantic arena. Exomax actually leave a few windows for you to be able to adjust your positioning during the fight, and utilizing these moments is key in order for you to succeed. While the Exomax are one of the funnest I had when fighting a boss during recent times, I cannot deny that there are flaws in this fight, such as Ares having way too subtle of a telegraph, the projectile spam can be way too much at times, and the 4 Exomax phase that features an absolute utter nightmare. However, I am sure that this fight still deserves to be here, mainly because this fight is still quite brand new, and some tweaking will definitely push this to my favorites. But for now, this catalyst of a Mecha Mayhemm earns no higher than number 9. Born from the Chinese side of the community, Holy Sword surely possesses some top tier boss design that can even rival most other bosses out there, even without a good looking sprite whatsoever. How is that possible? Well, let's break down the fight. Holy Sword is one of the simpler fights out there. While that may sound bad in retrospect, Holy Sword uses that simplicity to its advantage. The simplicity of most of the attacks makes learning the attacks straightforward. But during the actual battle, you really need to utilize those skills insanely well, especially because Holy Sword is an inanimate object that is possessed by some raging demons and can zoom around the map quickly. The simple mechanics along with the agile pacing makes the experience an incredible joy I thought I could never have when fighting a sword. This makes the fight a heated battle as you trade blows one after the other in this flashy fight. Holy Sword by itself doesn't do that much damage, but it can perform rapid strike combos that can catch you off guard and leave you in a very bad situation. The first phase features simple attack patterns and a great introduction as they are very fast but have huge margins of error. Phase 2 has a combination between random attack patterns and a fixed one to add to the mechanical tip. Easier attacks tend to be random since you can react to them fairly easily, while the harder fast slashes are fixed so you have a lot of chances to dodge its ferocious attacks. Phase 3 of Holy Sword has fixed attack patterns that consist of highly difficult attacks that are designed to end during the last cycle of the phase so the fight is able to reach a fitting conclusion. Overall, while Holy Sword doesn't have the most unique design, it has a perfect recipe that makes for such a memorable clash. Polarities is a boss like no other. While Holy Sword is a sentient possessed sword, Polarities are two sentient magnets that have the most complex mechanic on this list. Polarities have a different approach on how to be unique, and just like Warden, it is also executed incredibly well. The Polarities always remain on either side of the player. They don't remain strictly locked on. Instead, when the player moves, one of them will move more slowly while the other moves faster at a rate dependent on the distance between them and the player. You can tell which polarity will move more slowly by looking at the color of the background during the fight. This unique style of motion is complemented by a great variety of attacks. These attacks are very fast-paced, but they always come in the same order and have almost no randomness, meaning the entire fight can be learned consistently. The first phase of Polarities is intended as a simple teaching tool, so you can learn the basics on how the mechanic works so the complexity doesn't become too overwhelming, mainly because Polarities have the most difficult mechanical complexity in this list. For all the science nerds out there, they won't find the polarities interesting just mechanically, but also in concept, as these two take heavy influence from science and implement it into a Terraria boss. For example, the circular death ray is based on electromagnetic fields, and polarities by themselves are based on the unified nature of electricity and magnetism, and how each side of the pole has special interaction like retracting or getting pulled together. The polarities are truly very bizarre, and it is such creativity that makes it worthy of the top 10. We all know what the deal is with Serous. This serpentine beast is one of the causes of what caused the modding scene to blow up in 2021. Everything about this boss is just insanely high effort to the point where it doesn't feel like it belongs in Terraria. Serous is a boss that easily has the craziest art direction out there. The utilization of shaders effects are amazing, and it makes all of the attacks look insanely pretty. Not to mention, the arena where you fight it in looks atmospherically phenomenal. Serous is not overly complex, but the level of complexity is enough to make the fight a wonderful experience when combined with the art style. The first phase of the fight has varying subphases where it gets progressively more difficult before it reaches the second phase. The second phase is quite similar to the first one, except it implements the gimmick of moving platforms and escalates the difficulty level. Mobility is crucial if you want to keep your composure stable, as Serous will launch attacks that make you want to keep moving out of your comfort zone. The attacks and the mechanics complement each other really well, since you gotta maintain your positioning while focusing on the barrage of attacks Serous spit at you, adding to the fight's depth. Once Serous reaches low HP, it will unleash the infamous God Laser with the coolest sound effect. Despite the hype that it received, I personally think there are still bosses that are better than Serous. But all things considered, Serous is still a breathtaking experience. Who was once a boss I considered to be deserving of a crown, is now dethroned from the title of king. Mutant will have gone down a lot more from this rank if it weren't for the rework it just got during the Fargo Sticks update. Mutant is essentially an amalgamation of all the vanilla bosses you have seen in an NPC form. This NPC helps you across your journey, selling valuable boss summons. But at the end of the mod, a plot twist is revealed that this harmless looking companion you have met in your playthrough is actually the final boss of the game. While there's no lore significance, there's a feeling of an honorable duel once you begin the fight. Mutant attack patterns consist of vanilla bosses team attacks that are scaled to endgame, and it gives a final boss feeling that everything you have faced will now truly come to an end in this excellent battle. Mutant is also solid mechanically, boasting a huge quantity of attack patterns that mostly require very precise movement and good understanding on how they work. My favorite attacks are the attacks that include Mutant's signature weapon, the Penetrator, a spear that has the ability to do insanely flashy stuff. The latest Mutant rework also increased the fight quality tremendously. It now has more telegraphs to make the fight less bullshit, changes to make most of the attacks more interesting, and a randomized pattern that makes the fight more varied as it was completely fixed and too predictable. While Mutant may no longer be the king, it is still a fight I always have huge respect for. Descending from the heaven, Nebula star blasted her way to the top 3 boss. Another boss from the Mod of Redemption, but in a stark contrast from the Warden, Nebulus has next to no gimmicks. Her first phase is a fairly fast-paced fight as Nebulus rains down stars from the sky and shoots out high-velocity projectiles. What differs Nebulus from other basic projectile bosses is how the fight is set up. It is projectile based by design, but Nebulus will mix his attacks with really fast dashes and a grab attack. She also has a unique way of telegraphing, where the boss will speak the name of the attack that you can read to predict the fast projectiles in advance. Phase 1 is a great warm-up for Phase 2 as she uses a lot of similar attacks between her two forms. If the player has strayed far from the path of good after beating her first phase, she will offer to continue the fight if the player wishes. If accepted, this is where the real fight starts as she gains a massive spike in difficulty. During this phase, expect a lot of dashing around the screen at a quick pace, bombarding the players with stars and lasers, and even teleporting every few seconds that makes this fight anime as hell. Despite all of this, her attacks are well telegraphed, thus quite fair and dodgeable, but it still demands high reaction skill. Nebulus is really nerve-wracking and hyper-fast, but never unfair, and this is what I really love about this Angel of Redemption. I have come to the conclusion that Providence is an extremely underappreciated boss, specifically the nighttime version of the fight. Providence just nails what I love about what makes the boss really well designed and combines it into a memorable battle. Providence's basic daytime form is already great by itself, but the nighttime variant takes it a step further. The night form is a heavily tuned up version of the original with more chaotic patterns, the exclusion of the annoying profane guardian phase, and even the inclusion of new attacks that are some of the most difficult to manage. Providence is a bullet hell fight that is really well designed in a way where the fight is brutally difficult but it's never unfair. She can summon exploding gigablasts that releases homing fire whips, molten mines, converging death rays, crystal shard, curved holy spear, and purifying stars. Sounds like a lot? Because it is. Though it is not unfair since intense study of her pattern can enable you to react to most of the projectiles she throws at you. Providence has a fixed tactic, which may make it too predictable on paper, but her bullet hell nature complements this behavior really well. Providence also has a cocoon phase, which is the hardest part of the fight, and it is more than welcoming that you are able to focus just on the touching since she is basically immune to damage during that phase. It may take some time, but trying to overcome the goddess is an experience worth every second as the learning curve adds immense entertainment value to this battle. Providence's theme also heavily supports the pacing of the fight with grandiose holy organs and the fierce and intense tension of the melodies, fitting of a purity goddess that seeks destruction. From the moment you finally defeat the eternally blazing profane goddess, this optional battle is an absolute bombshell of entertainment. But there is still one final boss that will take the title of king. And for my number one choice for the best modded Terraria boss, it is none other than the Sith Lord himself, Seth. This WinRAR licensed angel will do anything in his power to make this a battle you will never forget. Seth has two forms, Sunstorm and Ultimate. The Sunstorm Seth is a heavily toned down version compared to the Ultimate version, as his main goal is a teaching tool but is still no pushover. Sunstorm Seth is already awesome by itself, but his Ultimate version manages to break my expectation in the final anime as hell fight with intense rock theme in the background that personifies into one of the best soundtrack I've ever heard. Seth has quite an expansive moveset that is not all too complicated, but is executed in flurry combos that have high precision. This fight is a massive throwback to the previous entry on this list, the Holy Sword, for roughly having a very similar reasoning on what makes for an entertaining battle, simple attacks, but executed lightning fast. Though, unlike Holy Sword who has boring character design, Seth takes up the form of a badass looking angelic knight and the visuals of the fight never cease to amaze me. As Ultimate Seth has been unchained from his seal, Seth gains a plethora of new behavior, such as more ferocious attacks and even gaining a new attack such as the sweeping rainbow laser that he shoots from a Gazer Blaster. The masterpiece of Seth boss design comes from the fact that successfully predicting his movement will result in you dodging his attack 99% of the time. It is incredibly consistent. Combine that fact with the sheer difficulty of the fight makes this battle nothing short of an absolute perfection. I can still fondly remember my first time beating Ultimate Seth. I bursted into joy when I have finally bested the knight after hours of attempts. Having overcome the difficult learning curve, I can now beat Ultimate Seth with no problem, but the memorable experience of those past difficulties is something I always relish. It is without a doubt in my mind that Seth is the best boss in modded Terraria, and it really excites me to see what other amazing bosses the community will provide in the upcoming future. But of course, that's just my opinion. Let me know what are some of your most favorite bosses in the comments down below. But for the meantime, this is the end of my ranking. If you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe for more, and I will be seeing you in the next video. Peace.